And sometimes I can become so bitter. You know, there are some things I never close a book on. I'm not talking about unforgiveness, I'm talking about redress. About this feeling that the universe has cheated you out of something, that you have been wronged, if not by a person, then by situations. Everyone can look at those situations and agree that what happened to you was rotten and it was unfair. And there's no cut-off point for me when it really hurts, when it really cuts to the core of things you care about. There's no cut-off point for me as to when you stop looking for some kind of redress. You stop looking for someone to come along and tell you that they saw it and it was rotten and it's going to be made right, that somehow it's going to be fixed. I guess your capacity to let go of things like that is very directly tied to how much you cared about them in the first place. To how much they defined you to begin with. How much those dreams and cares and hopes meant to you. See, I'm running out of words to say, but not feelings. The feelings just keep coming on, but the words won't. Do you know, it would serve me a lot better to talk about what it was like back then. How everything was hope, how everything was grace, how everything was a path leading on in front of me. Now that path is lost somewhere, and I'm well off it. You know when you're driving along the motorway, or along some one-way system, and you know you have to get off this road at this particular speed ramp. You have to come off because this is the only way you know to get to where you're meant to go. And you're boxed in by cars. And they're on your left side and your right side, and it's come up on you unexpectedly and you can't get across the lane. And so you're split off. And before the years of TomTom, that was it for you. You had to drive around in circles for years, well, for ages, to see if you could find a sign that might possibly guide you back to somewhere you knew when you could find your way in the right direction. Or when they're doing roadworks. You're on the path, you know the way. You know where you're supposed to go. You know what turn you're supposed to take, but you get there and it's roadworks all the way along. And they won't let you turn where you're supposed to turn. And when you miss it, they won't let you double back because it's one way. And all the turns that you think might lead there, no left turn or no right turn. And you're forced away from your destination. That's what my youth was like. For so long I was blissfully unaware. I was driving on my journey, and I thought I was heading the right way. I was absolutely convinced that God had told me. And if you're not religious and you don't believe in God giving direction, or if you are religious and you don't believe in God giving direction to individuals, well, I'm sorry, but I was one of those people who did believe that God directs Christians. And I believed I had this path to follow. And I got so far along it, and it looked like everything was so right. It looked like everything was coming together. And even when things went wrong, almost immediately after, something new would seem to come together again, as if God was restarting a process. God was getting it ready to function. Like I said, it seemed like a moment when the world could turn. And somehow, suddenly, just all the turns seemed to be roadworks. Blocked off, one way, no entry. No right turn, no left turn. And my life got lost. And it's difficult for people to understand the connection between being young and feeling qualified for a dream. And I can understand why you might think that when you see a dream as being this short-term goal or a long chain of linked-up short-term goals, then you probably can't see how tightly and importantly being young is linked up to living the dream. But when you don't see it that way, when you see it more as, well, in part something that's relational, something that has to do with identity, then it starts taking on a very different meaning. You know? If you see yourself not only as someone who is going to do things X, Y, and Z, but is going to bring a group together, it is going to be one that can draw things together, then it does have an effect. You know, I once had it prophesied over me. If I'm offending a religious among you again, I'm sorry. You just have to get over it. But my life was like an octopus, but I was like an octopus, in that I had tentacles spreading in all directions, into many different things. And that I could be one, I think, who could bring people together, was supposed to bring people together. Yet I couldn't. Back in my youth, everyone split apart. Everyone who I thought had potential, everyone who I thought had the desire to do great things, to make a difference for God, all of them ended up splitting apart and going their own separate ways. And I don't think most of them did very much for God at all, and certainly nothing like what they could have done together.